Tim Burton's films are certainly spooky, but are they Gothic in the traditional sense of the word? Today, we're diving into the art, architecture, and history that defines both Tim's work and the enduring Gothic tradition. First of all, what is Gothic? Without getting too lost in the ruins, this shape pretty much tells you everything you need to know about Gothic style. It's called the Gothic arch. It replaced the Roman arch in stone architecture, and it shows a dichotomy between both smooth, curving lines and a sharp point at the top. It feels beautiful, but also a little dangerous. The Gothic arch is a load-bearing structure. It was used to hold up churches, abbeys, and mostly churches. Like the Gothic arch, Tim Burton's filmmaking blends whimsy with the unsettling. It's spooky, but also oddly comforting. The way we use the word Gothic today mostly comes from the Victorian era, when the word Gothic was used to describe novels that had dark or unsettling themes, like Dracula, which is about a vampire, or Frankenstein, about an undead guy. In literature, it was the place where banished superstitions and irrational fears went to live on in the shadows. The word carried a fear of otherness that began when the Roman Empire was invaded by tribes including the Goths around 500 AD. Today, Gothic is a sort of flexible term that can mean medieval, Victorian, decaying, dark, death-obsessed, or just be a general catch-all term for horror. The author of Gothic, An Illustrated History, writes Gothic revolves around ideas of transgression, the breaching of boundaries of life and death, knowledge and belief, and this restless transformation that makes Gothic a perfect place for many to explore foundational questions of self and other. No wonder Gothic has become a place where unspeakable stories find their voice. The library of Gothic stuff includes things like the Gothic arch, gargoyles, stone ruins, pale skin, pipe organs, stained glass, and dead, gnarled nature. We'll see all these things in our tour de Tim. The Goths were, depending on who you ask, a Germanic tribe, and that's apt because the launch point for Tim Burton's entire visual aesthetic is this film called The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is a German expressionist film from 1920 by Robert Wiene. It's fantastic, and it has everything: a mad scientist, a gorgeous outsider, an angry mob, sets that have no business staying upright. This impressionistic visual style roars through Tim Burton's films like Beetlejuice and Batman. From movements in film, German expressionist filmmakers used visual distortion and hyper-expressive performances to show inner turmoils, fears, and desires of that era. German expressionism reached its peak between World Wars I and II. The Germans were in a bad economic depression. Their money was worthless, and they had just lost a world war in a big way. Poverty and violence were fresh in filmmakers' minds. Fritz, director of the iconic 1927 film Metropolis, said, "I am profoundly fascinated by cruelty, fear, horror, and death. My films show my preoccupation with violence, the pathology of violence." German artists were processing horrors and experimenting with new ways of life. That is, until Hitler rolled in and blamed them for corrupting all of German society. But if nothing makes any logical sense, why should buildings? Or art? Or facial expression? So what's the through line from Gothic to German expressionism to Tim Burton? The answer is probably obvious, but it's horror. You might not think of Tim Burton's films as explicitly horror films, but they all have some horror elements in them. Some of them, like Sleepy Hollow or Sweeney Todd, straight up belong in the horror section. But Tim's films also have something else, something warm and whimsical, that helps us embrace the darkness. For this video, I'm going to look at 3 films that I think best represent Tim Burton at his most Gothic. Let's take a closer look. There's something about Tim Burton's brand of Gothic that's actually cute. Maybe it's because his characters all have a certain look. Pale skin, big eyes, round faces. Humans are evolutionarily programmed to want to take care of soft, fluffy creatures with big eyes. That's why we have soft spots for puppies and kittens and babies, or like Jenna Ortega and Winona Ryder. Tim even has a movie called Big Eyes about Margaret Keane, this woman who got famous by painting sad-looking kids with big eyes. The best place to emphasize big eyes is in animation. So even though the world we enter in Corpse Bride is dark and dreary, the protagonists have these big, wide, hopeful eyes that make us wonder, is everything gonna be okay? The creators of Corpse Bride said they wanted the land of the dead to look alive and the land of the living to look dead. Corpse Bride places Victorian Gothic elements like ruins, rose windows, and Gothic angles next to playful elements like bright colors and dancing skeletons. I especially love the tiki lampshade in this shot. The crew said the land of the dead isn't based on a single afterlife tradition, but the underworld kind of reminds me of Dia de los Muertos, a celebration of deceased loved ones from Mexico that keeps them alive in our memories. This celebration of death is oddly different from Western Victorian ideas of death, where death is like the worst thing that could ever happen to someone. But in the land of the dead, which is supposed to be scary, there are all these cute gags, and the denizens like living there. The shadow of death is literally warmed up by the Corpse Bride's warm underworld color palette. And even though the world of Victor and Victoria is dreary and blue, there's a warmth in their relationship that provides shelter from the cold. Well, the city in Batman is literally called Gotham, so I felt like I had to include one of the two Batmans. This austere Metropolis is the ultimate place to see some Gothic stuff and some German Expressionism. Take this spooky graveyard scene, for example, or the abandoned calamity of the Penguin's Lair. This movie is also set at Christmas, the ultimate medieval holiday. I love the way this movie subverts Christian Bible stories, like the penguin is a corrupt Moses. Selina Kyle has a Lazarus-like rebirth as Catwoman, and I love that Frankenstein stitching on her costume. Batman Returns sees Catwoman at her most punk rock. She rocks a smudgy devil-may-care eyeliner and bleeding red lips that goth music artists like The Cure loved to sport. This color combo was so vogue amongst the goth set because of something called tuberculosis chic. In the Victorian era, the disease tuberculosis made your skin pale, your eyes sunken, and your lips just bitten red. It was a coveted look that perfectly exemplifies goth's dance with the dead. Batman Returns is one of Tim's darkest films. The character deaths are melancholy, powerful, and made all the more tongue-in-cheek next to a celebration of the birth of Christ. But here, Christmas presents its own form of horror. Capitalism. Batman Returns is probably Tim Burton's most literally gothic piece, but the horror feels a little bit satirical. The supervillain is a department store owner. His evil henchman has an adorable posse of penguins. Catwoman is kind of the comic relief. Even though this world is dark and grim, it contains Tim's signature sweetness that makes the gothic goofy. Edward Scissorhands is one of my favorites of Tim's, and not just because Bo Welch's production design is damn near perfect. Look at all those Gothic arches in this shot alone. The production references not just medieval Gothic with one of the best Gothic towers I've ever seen, but also what Professor Roger Lockhurst calls Edgelands Gothic. Think of that sense of darkness simmering underneath the surface of your damn good cup of coffee in works like Twin Peaks, or the suburban decay of Stranger Things. Tim's early career was really in touch with the sinister undercurrents of 1980s America. In Edward Scissorhands, the suburban world is distorted and almost grotesque, tainted by conformity and groupthink. Edward's artistic touches are seen at first as cute and then as dangerous. This group of status quo-loving socias threaten creativity and culture for the precious alternative hero. The socias beat up on Edward, who is literally disabled because he has scissors for hands. This parable about a creator who only has the tools to destroy pierces my heart with its scissor hand. I just hope we can all be more like Winona Ryder's character Kim, who sees the beauty in everything. Today, Gothic can represent otherness, horror, or just Victorian/medieval times. I like that Tim Burton puts Gothic horror next to cozy things like big eyes or dancing skeletons. It shows us that darkness isn't always scary, and sometimes it can show us a way out. For me, it all comes back to the Gothic arch. The arch has soft curves, but there's always some pointy bits that keep you on your toes. It's a dichotomy that reminds us that we will die, but there's still some beauty in life. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you don't miss a minute of art history. But even if you don't do any of that stuff, I'm so glad you dropped by today. Take care, everybody. Cheers.